Ready? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this portion of the Public Works Recreation Arena Committee agenda. I am your chair, Jason Trombetta. Note to the public, please all cell phones, pagers, everything off. Any change in items on the agenda? Seeing none. And disclosure of peculiar interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none. We'll go on to appointments. Item PW 17-19, Director of Public Works, Mr. Mike DePaula, PowerPoint presentation, Bridge 34. Refer to item PW 2019 under staff reports, being recommendation report RFD PW 0719, replacement of Bridge 34, which carries North Chippawa Road over Wolf Creek. Mr. DePaula, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Trombetta. So I quickly put together a PowerPoint presentation just to kind of summarize the contents of the report. So I'll go through that. Hopefully this works. There we go. Okay, replacement of Bridge 34 carries North Chippawa Road over Wolf Creek. Basically, Bridge 34, I'm going to lay out an overview background, just summarizing what's in the report. I'll also talk about the replacement options that Associated Engineering has presented to this committee. Then I'll talk about some other options that staff investigated. Basically, they entail deck replacement instead of replacing the entire bridge. And then I'll conclude with the recommendations of the report. Oh. I told my wife to call me in case things go good or bad, I'll just say. Yeah. Okay, overview. So the bridge was constructed by the Ministry of Transportation back in 1956. The province was responsible for all bridge structures until the mid-1990s. At that time, they downloaded a lot of roads and bridges to the lower municipalities. And along with that, there was an Ontario regulation, Regulation 104-97, where municipalities are legislated under the Public Transportation and Highway Improvement Act to ensure every bridge is kept safe and in good repair. And in order to do that, we perform biannual inspections, and legislation dictates that you must do that under the guidance of a professional engineer. So here's a chronological summary of the recommendations from the biannual inspections. Back in 2013, due to the condition of the bridge, it received a load restriction. And in 2017, the bridge further deteriorated, resulting in a lower load rating. And then in April 2018, there was another report to council revising the posting to 5 tons, and ultimately it led to the closure of the bridge due to the condition of it. That's kind of cut off there, sorry. So the environmental assessment study was done in 2014, which recommended the closure and removal of the existing bridge. That was not endorsed by council, and the EA study was never filed. Just to note, Environmental Assessment Act study has to be undertaken whenever the infrastructure we're dealing with is being contemplated. For example, if you're going to, in this case, close a road, you would have to undertake an environmental assessment study. Or if you were to widen a road from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, if you're changing the use of the asset, you have to undertake an environmental assessment study. That's legislated. Bridge 34 is currently identified in the 10-year capital forecast in 2023 and 2024 for replacement. And the funding amount is $865,000 in our forecast. So Associated Engineering presented some replacement options. Those are summarized in Appendix B of the report. This table kind of just summarizes that. They looked at the removal of the bridge for about $130,000. Those are estimated construction costs, and you'd have to add engineering and contingency, about another 20% to that. They looked at twin circular culverts, with a design life of 30 to 50 years for a total cost of approximately $708,000. They looked at low-profile culverts, again, 30 to 50 years at a dollar figure of $738,000. They looked at a concrete bridge similar to what was built at Bridge 12, close to $1 million. They looked at a Bailey Bridge option, $720,000, and a multi-plate culvert at $738,000. The last three there are basically like 75-year life of the structure. So other options, a comprehensive review of all the background information, reports, studies, and the current condition of the bridge was undertaken by staff. The conclusion was that the existing substructure, even though it's old, it's in good shape. You know, the concrete abutments and the wing walls, they're generally in good condition. It's reinforced concrete. So the thinking was, instead of replacing the entire bridge structure, we could reuse the substructure and just remove the concrete girders, the deck, and the barriers, which are in poor condition, leading to the closure of the bridge. And then we looked at two options. We looked at a modular panel truss structure with a timber deck. There's different options that you could use for a deck on this type of structure, just a metal grate or a metal with waterproofing and asphalt, or a timber deck. For this location, we chose a timber deck because I think it suits the area, you know, country road, gravel road, low traffic. And we also looked at a reinforced concrete slab on steel girders with an asphalt wearing surface. So that's what a modular panel truss looks like. They're built in 10-foot sections. These types of structures are designed and engineered by various manufacturers. There's all kinds of different manufacturers that do that. So as I mentioned, they come in 10-foot sections. So in order to fit the existing abutments, which is a 32-foot span, we had to work with them to figure out how they could change the design of their panels to meet that span. And there was some extra costs related to customizing. Now these manufacturers, they design it and they deliver it to the site. It's up to a contractor to install it and remove the old bridge structure, the superstructure, modify the abutments and get this thing in place. So we reached out to a local contractor who has specific experience with installing these type of structures, and they priced it out at $480,000 plus 10% contingency, because we never know what we're going to run into, for a total cost of $528,000. Again, the structure has a 75-year design life, but it does have regular maintenance of the timber deck, and ultimately you have to replace that timber deck every 20 years or so. So working with that contractor, we determined that a reinforced concrete slab on steel girder with an asphalt wearing surface is probably the more economical structure to design and build. And this is basically what it's going to look like. There'll be 4 girders, steel girders. They'll be galvanized, and then we're using a tri-beam system instead of a parapet wall. So Rankin Construction was asked to provide a firm quotation to design and build this type of structure by using the existing abutments. The cost of that was $440,000 plus 10%, plus the town's portion of the HST for a total project cost of $493,200. And that's a 75-year design life. And again, less maintenance requirements than the previous option that we looked at. So the recommendations in the report, due to the condition of the existing bridge, there's an impeding threat of the bridge deck failing, which may affect the environment, safety, health, and the welfare of the general public, and potentially significant loss or damage to property. So as such, in order to mitigate these risks, the township, to the township and to restore and maintain essential services to minimum level since the road is currently closed and affecting the residents and farmers in the community. Staff is recommending that council authorize Rankin Construction to undertake the replacement of the existing bridge with that reinforced concrete slab on steel girder option at a total project cost of $493,200. And staff recommends that the 2019 budget be amended to accommodate this replacement and funded as follows: through development charges, through the bridge reserve, $255,000, and the road settlement reserve of $188,900. If that recommendation were to be approved, the closing balances in those two reserves are shown in the brackets. Any questions?
So I got a note from my clerk here. There's a request to move the report forward. If that's what, but once the questions are completed, I would like to do that if that's possible. So, sorry, I request to move the report forward. So I'm going to take questions, and then afterwards to remove the report forward. For consideration. Is that okay? That's the will of council?
Does that mean, if moving it forward, if we would vote for it, that means it's happening? Okay. I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
It's game on. So I will start with the mayor. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that you came forward with more options. I know it's been tough. It has been an easy file, but I really appreciate that you kept looking. I'm really pleased with the presentation. When the report comes forward, I see no reason not to support it. I think it's a beautiful way to solve the problem that that's been lurking out in there. It's about half the price of the first stab at it, so to speak, and we looked at different options, and you did your due diligence, and you came forward with an option that I think is very acceptable, at least to me, and I hope to the residents that live out there. Thanks.
Next. Councilor Rayner. Anybody? Nobody?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the director, can you move back to your previous slide where you were accounting for the cost? Okay, the development charge is fine. Bridge reserve, that's money that's already in reserve, so we're not doing anything to the bottom line of the tax for this year, correct?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct.
And the last one is the road settlement reserve. That again is coming out of a reserve that has no effect on the tax because that's a separate reserve. Is that not correct?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe that's correct, yes.
So the important thing about this is we're getting this bridge replaced. That initially it was going to cost $865,000, which I believe was your initial numbers when you first started this. It's now down to $493,000 only because we're lucky enough that the footings and everything are strong. It's basically the span that's the problem, so that's what you're replacing. And we can do it without increasing the taxes, and we can resolve the issue finally of Bridge 34 and put a close to this. I think this is a win-win-win all the way down the line. And I thank you very much for everything you've done on that. Very much appreciated. I know the people out there, it's been a real problem for them. Jason and I have many times spoken with them about it. And I realize there's not a huge amount of traffic there, but a bridge there is just as important to them as other things in other areas of this township are to other people. So we have to make sure that we respect everybody's level of why they need what they need from the township when they need it. And the last time they asked for a bridge was in 1956, I guess. And I believe the MTO is not in the business of making bridges anymore.
Not for us, they're not.
No, I think they're more into pulling trucks over and charging people. Anyways.
That's governance, Councillor.
Thank you. I think we've solved this problem thanks to the director's efforts, and I'm very pleased with this number, and I'm especially pleased that it's not going to be affecting the tax base. Thank you.
Councillor Yonker.
Yeah, I'd just also like to repeat what our Councillor Reiner said too. We are pretty excited to see this get figured out, and I think it's a no-brainer. Thank you for what you've put into this already. You're welcome to Township of West Lincoln and already doing good work, so good.
Thank you. If anyone has any further comments or questions, I got a few. I just wanted to say thank you to the director for bringing this forward. This is something that I've been pushing for. Was I not obviously to obviously opening roads? I never want to see roads closed. That's moving backwards as a township. But the one thing I do commend you for, Mr. Director, is options. We didn't have options before, and there was one thing I struggled with, and one thing I was waving my hands up in the air about, saying, how come we don't have options? This actually gives us options now as a council. And to see the options, I just want to say thank you for the hard work put into it. It's, you really took the bull by the horns coming into this position, and you stepped up and came up with a good thing here. And I want to thank you for it. For bringing this forward, because it is quite impressive. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for it, and hopefully it goes forward tonight. So thank you, Mr. Director. Oh, sure. Go.
Sorry. I just want a little clarification, because this almost seems a little too good to be true, if I can be honest. And so this is honestly not coming off, I don't even know who to direct this to, but this is not going to impact taxes whatsoever, through you, Mr. Chair?
It's not going to impact the tax bracket for, and we'll go through
For the
Donna, but if help me if I'm correct me and just hit me offside the head if I'm wrong. It's not going to impact the 2019 budget.
To you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Riley. The way we were able to finance this is through development charges that we collect for road rehabilitation and bridge rehabilitation, and the balance is from reserves.
Okay, and this is not going to, like, I guess maybe it's a tough question to ask, but this doesn't prevent any, like, is this going to, like, I guess, slow down any potential growth for road development in this ward as well? Like, I don't, like, so that road settlement, I'm assuming, is for the rehabilitation of roads.
That stuff there, Councillor Riley, sorry.
I'll take the compliment.
No.
Okay.
That stuff there, we'll all, if that's a different topic, we'll have to negotiate through budget. If slow down or not, that's
No, that's, I just want to make sure this is.
I could fast track 1,000 things in the budget, but that's gonna have, that's we in our budget deliberation talk. If
Okay. Well, just as we heard, like, Mayor has big plans and wants 3 kilometers of road a year, and I just want to make sure, like, I wasn't sure, so I'm just trying to get an understanding of the funds and where they're coming from.
I think the mayor threw out the 3 kilometers a year. He was hoping, but it's just a number he threw out. But it's not gonna.
It's not like a hard.
Again, that stuff's all discussed over budget, and when we go through more budget deliberations, where we are at with that and where we're going, that's where it'll come this year, next year, and the 2 years to follow. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Correct. Donna, do you want to add something?
I just think it's important to note, and it was in the presentation, this project is in the 10-year capital plan at $865,000 for 23 and 24. So you're actually moving a project up at a lower cost.
And does that push any projects back?
No.
Okay. So this. Okay. Thank you. I'm good.
Something else there, Councillor Rayner?
You have people on that side.
No, I got people on this side. Thanks. Councillor Ganan?
Okay, so further to that, I just have a couple of budget questions too, in terms of what was there. So before this wonderful option came, and I'm quite pleased to see it as well, there was the fact that we were going to have to take that bridge down because of the difficulties there and the safety factor. So was there an amount plugged into the budget already of the $160,000, $156,000? To take that bridge down originally. So that would be my first question through you, Mr. Chair, to our Director of Finance.
Through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Ganon. No, we did not budget for the removal of the bridge. We were waiting to see this report and see the results of it. So we just left it as it was in 23, 24 at a full replacement.
Okay, thank you. So further to that, if I may also ask, so now that we are so severely depleting both the bridge reserve and the road settlement reserve, is it your expectation that we should be upping for the 2019 budget the bridge reserve? Leaving it sitting at 39,000 going forward a year doesn't allow for any unforeseen circumstances. So being the financial wizard that you are and the very precise and very careful person that you are, will you be thinking that it will be necessary to up the bridge reserve for the 2019 budget?
Through you, Chairman Trebetta, to Councillor Ganan, the $255,000 that is being used from the bridge reserve originally came from the road settlement reserve. I believe there was a report in 2018 that gave staff direction to take $250,000 from the road settlement reserve to the bridge reserve. So in reality, it's really the road settlement reserve you're using. It's those funds you're using. And I've only earmarked the use of those funds for one project in 2019. And this decision does not impact what we budgeted for in 2019. I did not have that road settlement funds earmarked for anything else.
Okay, but further to that, again, if I can, I'm sort of wondering about the fact that we put into reserves, and pull when they're necessary. But based on the cost of bridges that we're just seeing in this report, starting the 2020 budget, for example, with $39,000 doesn't seem like a plausible starting space. So I'm just wondering whether there should be further bridge reserve money allocated, put aside, just in that building process going forward. Yeah. I just don't like the health, I think, of what that bridge reserve would be once this project's done. So,
yes, through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Ganan. In the 2018 budget, if you will recall, Council really increased the bridge reserve. It was increased to a $130,000 transfer. I believe before that we weren't even putting $50,000 in a year. So there was a nice significant increase, but you are correct. In 2020, we're going to have to look at further increasing that and further just looking at our roads and our bridges and the needs and how we're going to finance all of that. But we did make some ground work in 2018 by increasing it.
okay, thank you.
And just for clarification too, and it's one thing I want to add, that $255,000 that got put into the bridge reserve was a recommendation from the 2018 council. And I think if I can recall, if I can get the clerks to pull out, it was a recommendation brought forward by Councillor Bell and the mayor at the time to put the $255,000 that was left over from the Ward 1 resurfacing program that was in Ward 1. When the contract came in under budget, the balance was there was another recommendation by council to extend the roads, and that was turned down by council. And council decided to put the $255,000 left over into a bridge reserve for Bridge 34. And I know that motion was by Councillor Bell and by the mayor, which was supported by majority of all council at that time. So it's a point of clarification there. Councillor Cody? Councillor Rayner, anything else further? Because I'd like to bring this report up, and then I'd like to open up for questions from the gallery. So, thank you. So I need a motion to bring. Do I need a motion for that? No. Is everybody okay with it? Oh, I don't need a motion. Okay. So now. So. You don't. You don't want appointments right after this? Hold on, I'm getting some clarification from my clerk here. Hold on. Thank you. It's not me. It's not me. So I need a mover and a seconder to bring the report forward. Count the mayor, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Rayner. Now I can open it up for. Oh, all those in favor? That carries. Now I'd like to move that. Now I can move that up for questions. Now the report is open, and if you want to read that item, and then get a So what we did here, Councillor Jonker, I know we just this report here. So we moved. Actually, this is new for me too, to be honest with you. This is the first time I'm doing it as chair of Public Works, right? So. Sure, perfect.
Previous to this item, previous to this item being brought forward, the presentation section, there was a section there where you can request items to be moved forward on the agenda. Nothing was said at that time, but after the fact, we've determined that we would like to deal with this, or the chair would like to deal with this report at the time of Mr. DiPaolo's presentation. So now he is requesting, I know it's kind of out of sequence, but we have done it before. He's requesting that we move this staff report forward on the agenda to follow the presentation this evening. So it's all one flow, we're dealing with the issue as a whole. So just to explain that. So we are kind of going out of order, but we have done it before and we have allowed it, as long as it's good with the rest of council, which I believe it is. Yes.
There's.
So staff reports, item PW 2019, Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DiPaolo. Recommendation report, RFD PW 07 2019, replacement of Bridge 34, which carries North Chippawa Road over Wolf Creek. The recommendation that report RFD PW 07 2019, replacement of Bridge 34, which carries North Chippewa Road over Wolf Creek, be received, and that council authorize Rankin Construction to undertake the replacement of Bridge 34 in the amount of $440,653 plus HST in accordance with clause 4.5 of the tendering and purchasing policy, and that the replacement of Bridge 34 at a total budget cost of $493,200 be included in the 2019 draft operating and capital budget to be financed through development charges of $49,300, a transfer from the bridge reserve of $255,000, and a transfer from the road settlement agreement reserve of $188,900, and that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into an agreement with Rankin Construction. I need a mover. Councillor Rayner, seconder. Mr. Mayor, comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Yeah, and now we'll move on to Director of Public Works, PowerPoint presentation, rule and gravel roads.
Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you, Chair Trombetta, once again. Okay, rural gravel roads. Since I started here, I heard from some members of council and from the general public. They're requesting that some hard topping of gravel roads. So I'm here today to just to give you a presentation on my thoughts on that and industry standards and industry thoughts on this process. So let me start off with when do we convert a gravel road to a hard surface? It depends. It depends on a number of factors. First off, hard topping a gravel road that performs poorly will result in a hard top road that performs poorly. And not all gravel roads are conversion candidates. So the first thing I'll talk about in my presentation is just general information on gravel roads. And then I want to talk about a guideline for selection of pavement surface. It's kind of like a three-step process. Just like any asset, you need to look at a holistic approach, the whole network, the entire road network. You can't just look at, this road, this road, this road. You got to look at all of your assets and make good decisions. And then I'll just kind of summarize the presentation with some conclusions. So gravel roads, believe it or not, gravel roads are most common roadway surface in Canada. There's over 45,000 kilometers. Here in West Lincoln, we have 133 kilometers of gravel road. 71 kilometers are asphalt, and about 192 are surface treatment. Whoops, I'm going ahead of myself here. Okay, gravel roads are typically used for low volume roads with a daily traffic of less than 500. Surface treatment used for roads that have about 500 to 1,000 vehicles per day. However, some agencies use surface treatment up to 30,000 vehicles a day. So there's some provincial highways that are surface treated. Hot mix asphalt, typically anything over 1,000 cars per day. Gravel roads are also flexible pavement and flexible road structure, as are hot mix asphalt roads, as well as surface treatment roads. They're all considered flexible pavements, unlike concrete pavements, rigid pavements. Like hard surface road, the surface of a gravel road must also be renewed. The principal difference is the riding, wearing surface, and the pavement structure of a gravel road are one and the same, right? The gravel wearing surface forms part of the road structure. And that diminishes and disappears through normal wear and tear and even some maintenance operations, grading and winter control. As the gravel disappears, so does its performance as a road structure. Okay? Gravel road advantages, they're easy to construct, low maintenance costs. Basically, regrading and adding additional gravel is the primary maintenance activity. There are other maintenance activities associated with gravel roads, but that's the primary main activity. Disadvantages, it's necessary to maintain the crown, which is in the middle of the roadway, to ensure surface water drainage. Maintenance activities may be time consuming. It takes a lot of time to regrade the road. Typically they have lower operating speed, and there's a lot of dust from the breakdown of aggregates, and the roads do get dirty during wet weather conditions, and they get dusty during dry weather conditions. So here's just a schematic of a gravel road structure. Basically, you have your your crown driving surface. Then you also have a shoulder area that slopes directly away from the edge of the traveled area of the road, so that water could drain into the ditch, and then you have a proper ditch. So here's a picture of a good gravel road. It has nice crown, has nice deep ditches. It's hard to really see, but this is the travel portion of the road, which is basically your 2% crown on the road. And then there should be an area on the gravel road that is steeper than 2% to help drain and provide some support for the travel portion before you have a ditch. This image just shows that your ditches need to be deep enough so that your subgrade drains into the ditch. All right, if your ditches aren't deep enough, then your gravel road's not going to perform well. I think the three most important thing in road design is drainage, 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 right? And here's a picture of just a gravel road, where the crown of the road hasn't been maintained, so you can see what's happening with drainage. And again, this is known as a secondary ditch, right? Your real ditch is over here, but without proper maintenance, you get rutting on the side, and you have a secondary ditch, and your road's not going to perform well if you decide to hardtop that. So just general overview of gravel roads. Now, guideline for selection of pavement types. This procedure combines various factors and considerations. It's kind of a three-step process. First, you have to select screening and selection guidelines. And for the purpose of this presentation, that could be your roadway inventory, and I will touch upon all these in the presentation. Traffic, right? How much traffic is there? Construction history, and then impact on local residents. Those are some things that should be considered in your first step or your screening guideline. And then you really should do some field investigation, or at least some preliminary design. You should do some condition survey. As part of the road needs study, we have done that, so we do have some information. But you should also do some kind of testing, destructive testing through ways of boreholes to confirm that you have a good pavement structure. Or there's also some other non-destructive testing techniques to get that information. Because first off, people seem to forget about first principles engineering, right? You got to have proper engineering on a road before you even consider upgrading it. And then the third step is your priority analysis. Very important to have a pavement management system so that you can do cost-benefit ratios and performance modeling, looking at your entire network and seeing what, if you make this decision, what it does to this part of your network and so on. And then you have to look at program funding levels. So I'll touch upon all of these. Step 1, roadway inventory. It's important to update and validate the information from the 2014 roads needs study. It is 5 years old, so some of that information could be out of date. You need to verify road widths, right? You don't want a hard top of road that's 4 meters wide or because then you're taking on more risk if you hard top something that's substandard. You have to verify road classification, even look at some entrances. Is the road a lot of residential use, industrial use, commercial use? Those are all important attributes of a roadway to help with the screening process. Traffic. Again, it's important to update and validate the information in the 2014 road needs study. Important to calculate or estimate commercial vehicles, maybe based on the usage of the road by doing an assessment of what kind of driveways are off the road, operating speed, and terrain type. With that information, you could very easily convert to a 20-year design equivalent single axle loads. So for strength analysis, what type of road do you really need here? Is it a road that only needs 6 inches of gravel, a foot of gravel, 2 feet of gravel? These are all important. Construction history. It's good to review any original or rehabilitation construction records to identify any pavement performance or even constructability issues. If you're currently out there doing maintenance, then maybe there's something wrong with the roadway that you're looking at. So that will help you determine whether it's a candidate or not. And again, frequent maintenance may indicate insufficient pavement structure. Impact on local residents. A lot of these things are, you can't really measure them, right? They're intangible benefits. Sound levels, gravel versus surface treatment, number of dwelling units near the roadway, proximity of those dwelling units near the roadway, flying aggregate, loose aggregate, dust impact to the environment, to the crops, people's property, and community expectations. So that's the first step, right? What are our screening criteria? Maybe you could, we could develop that, give it a weighting factor, what's more important. And once you have that, then you should undertake some kind of preliminary engineering, right? Some kind of preliminary investigation. Condition survey is the first step. Condition ratings in accordance with the MTO procedure for gravel roads. There's a standard on how you do that. You go out and you measure your surface defects. That could be your loose gravel, dust, potholes, breakup, deformation, right? Washboarding and rutting, loss of crown on the road, distortion, shoulder distress, excessive height, those secondary ditches that I was talking about, overgrowth on the ditches. And after you do those surveys, you get a condition rating. And the 2014 roads needs study did review gravel roads and come up with condition ratings. But once again, that information is outdated. It's over 5 years old. A lot of things change over 5 years. Then you can undertake a geotechnical investigation. This determines the actual thickness of your road base and the quality of your road, the quality of the granular. It also determines the subgrade soil, the type and the strength of it. The only problem with that is it is costly and time consuming to do these investigations. You know, you basically need to have a geotechnical consulting firm come out with a drill rig and do some drilling, and that'll measure the thickness of the gravel, and you're able to take samples and do sieve analysis on them and stuff like that. But the good thing is you're able to get true information. And then you could take a split spoon sample, which is basically, it tells you what your subgrade soil is. And this is a illustration of a split spoon sample. It basically, what it does is you put the split spoon into the hole once you auger through the pavement structure, and you drop a weight of 63 kilograms from a height of 750 millimeters. Don't ask me why it's that height, but, you know, a lot of history with engineering, right? They come up with these numbers. And what you do is you drop that hammer and you count the number of blows, right? The number of times the hammer advances the split spoon into a foot, right? And based on those values, then you're able to determine what your subgrade is, right? Is it loose? Is it dense? Is it very dense? Who knows? A lot of times your subgrade could just be nothing but topsoil, right? A lot of times when they build these roads, they just dig out the ditches, put it in the middle of the road, and then just throw gravel on top. And that's the worst subgrade you could have for a gravel road. So it's important to do some investigation. Boreholes are time consuming, and it is pretty costly. So another option is it's called it's called the FWD test, falling weight deflectometer. And here's an illustration of it. You basically have this unit on the back of a vehicle, and every so many meters weight onto the pavement. And it's a 40 kilonewton weight, and what it measures is the deflection in the pavement, and it'll give you a number in millimeters, and that'll correlate back to how much pavement thickness there is. So that's a quick way to get a lot of information. And with that, you could estimate pavement life. So there's charts that tell you, you know, based on the pavement thickness and you know, the average reading of all the tests and the standard deviation, you're able to determine it's a good pavement, which has 15 to 20 years. So again, it's important information to have. So what this slide, I just want to walk through this slide. You have ABC road and XYZ road, right? The current information we have right now is just the pavement condition, which is from the 2014 Roads Need Study. And again, it's 5 years old. But when you look at this, like, you want a hard topper road that's in good shape, right? So based on this, on that information, you would want a hard topper road that has a 78 rating, condition rating, as opposed to 71. But with the extra information from some preliminary engineering, this is the effective SN number, structural number. So on ABC road, we may have taken, you know, a number of tests with this piece of equipment and determined that the mean structural number is 60, right, with a standard deviation of just 6. So the numbers are fairly consistent. Whereas this other pavement, where we think it's in better shape, you have a lower mean and a much wider standard deviation, right? So a lot of your numbers vary a lot, so the pavement's very inconsistent. So what that'll tell you is it converts back to remaining years left in the pavement. So you can very easily see that even though this pavement is in better condition at 78, with all this extra analysis, it's a fair road. So it's not really a good candidate. The first road would have been a better candidate to pick. Okay? So that just, you know, high-level overview of what some engineering and some data collection, in addition to what we currently have, will help make sound decisions. And then once you have that, you have to do a priority analysis, so you can look at cost-benefit ratio. So let's have a look at life cycle cost of a gravel road versus a surface treatment road. It's hard to read. These numbers are from a 2007 study, so let's not get caught up on the numbers, but the process and the rationale it makes sense. But for a gravel road, you know, you would have to, in over a 45-year life, you know, year 5, you'd have to add some gravel and regrade it. Year 8, you might have to do the same because you lose some of the aggregate over 3 years. Same thing in year 10, and then by year, you know, maybe year 15, you got to do some ditching work. And so anyway, those are all the activities, maintenance activities of a gravel road, and the cost associated with it. It comes up to $1 figure. And this chart, it says $13,000 over 45 years. All right, let's add inflation, whatever it is, but just for order of magnitude. Surface treated roads, same thing. Once you do hard top it, you know, year 10, you should be doing it again because you have to redo the surface. Otherwise, you'll get more deterioration. Year 15, year 20, year 25, you almost have to do it every 5 years after that. And there's a cost associated with that. And in this example, it's $60,000. So this table kind of summarizes that. Once again, it's from a 2007 study. And I think everyone knows this, but you know, your life cycle cost is the surface treated road, you're about 50% higher than a gravel surface, and that's the life cycle cost, discounted back to like today's dollars. But the undiscounted maintenance cost is like 360% more expensive than a gravel road. So that's just, you know, so that's some analysis that you have to do, cost-benefit ratio. However, I did say that there are some other benefits that you can't really put a cost to, so we have to somehow develop what the community needs are and you know, figure that out, right? Performance modeling, pavement deterioration curves. This is very important. This chart here shows basically on this axis is your condition, 0 to 100. So a new road has 100 pavement condition index, right? Perfect road, 100, and it will deteriorate to 0 with time, right? 25 years, 30 years, whatever it is. And the reason why I have this chart up here is it's important to, once a pavement deteriorates, it's important to have some maintenance activity on it to increase the condition of it and extend the life, okay? Every time you do a little bit of maintenance to a road, it extends the life of the pavement. A lot of agencies look at worst roads, so once you get to about a 40 PSI, it's ready to be reconstructed. And if you were to do that at a 40 and you reconstruct it to 100, then the pavement deteriorates again, and you don't really get the best bang for your buck, right? Just like a vehicle, right? You're going to have to do regular maintenance to it to extend the life of it. And so this graph shows the same thing. Good road, even though a road's in good shape, you want to do some work to it to extend the service life of it. So, you know, with all that information and looking at maintenance activity, construction history, you get different pavement deterioration curves for different types of pavements. You know, maybe this is a curve for a gravel road versus surface treatment versus asphalt. So that's another analysis you have to look at. And from our 2014 roads needs study, I think this is important to show. So when a pavement hits 60, that's the time when you want to resurface it, right? Because resurfacing a road is cost effective and it adds a lot of life to it. Whereas if you wait till a road deteriorates to a point where it's basically failed, like 40, 45, and you have to reconstruct it, the cost to reconstruct it is like 4 times as much. And you're not getting the best bang for your buck, and you're not extending the service life. So from the 2014 roads need study, they did look at gravel roads, and I just wanted to show you, 5 years ago, the pavement condition of some of these gravel roads that were below 45, so they're basically reconstruction candidates, is about 18 kilometers out of the 133 that we have. And again, those are reconstruction candidates. You don't even want to touch those. And you're going to have to touch them one day, but it's going to be big dollars to improve them. And then 45 to 60 PCI, it's kind of beyond the point of hard topping it without any major improvements. You're looking at around 60 kilometers. And then anything over 60 PSI was about 57 kilometers. But again, this information is 5 years old, so we need to update this. So the whole key to priority analysis is you have to develop a program funding levels. It looks at program funding levels, and a pavement management system does that for you. It models the entire network to determine future asset and future condition, and it assists with prioritization. Like a pavement management system will give you great information. Like you could look at an unlimited budget and say, okay, how do this red line, this blue area, if you have all this information in your pavement management system, you do a quick query and say, what are all my needs? And then it'll tell you, you need to spend X, this blue shaded area is how much money you need to spend on all your reconstruction, so all the roads that have a very poor condition, like a PCI of 40 and under. And in the green area here, will tell you your resurfacing candidates, right? Those good roads, 60, and it'll tell you what you should be doing and how much you should be spending, and it'll tell you what you're going to, network-wise, what kind of improvements are you making. It could also run analysis for you to say, okay, if we have, what does it say, 10 million, 10 million a year, this is what you're, help me out here. 10 is the red. 10 is the red, okay, that makes more sense. So yeah, so how much, if you spend X amount of dollars, what happens to your condition over time? And in this scenario, you probably want, if you want to keep your pavement condition at a 70, it's probably the purple line is what your funding requirements are in order to sustain. Right, so pavement management systems are very important. We have a 2014 roads needs study. It tells us what we need to do, but a pavement management system is a very useful tool, coupled with your guideline and your screening stuff and some geotechnical and preliminary engineering. So in summary, when do we convert a gravel road to a hardtop surface? It depends. Depends on a number of factors. I think we could all agree on that now. So in conclusion, our 2016 asset management plan, it's mostly age-based assessments. There are some assets that are condition-based, like the roads. We did that 2014 roads needs study, so that was a condition assessment. Our bridges are assessed based on condition through our biannual inspections. So in our 2016 asset management plan, the cost of unpaved roads are not included in that asset management plan. And the city's current funding in a 10-year forecast does not address the needs in our asset management plan. So that's important to note. The township is starting its asset management policy. It's regulated under Ontario Regulation 58817. By mid-2019, the town needs to have a strategic asset management policy in place, and it should be updated every 5 years. That's what the legislation is telling us to do. And by mid-2021, all municipal governments should have an approved asset management plan for the core assets, which is basically public works assets, right? Roads, bridges, culverts, water, wastewater. And that approved asset management plan needs to discuss current levels of service, which is something we need to work on, and the cost to maintain those levels of service. So that all kind of works into our decision-making process. I mentioned it many times, but I think a road needs study needs to be updated. And the gravel roads, you know, our gravel road network, since it's a majority of our road network, 133 kilometers, that needs to be reviewed and included to ensure that we make good decision-making. It needs to be included in our asset management plan. It needs to be included in our asset management policy. And a pavement management system would definitely be a useful tool. So it's important to develop a decision model for the surface type selection for low-volume rural roadways. We need to continually evaluate that model for all roadway sections. You can't just look at one or two roads. And we need to prioritize the sections for possible upgrading. Maybe there's some roads that are fine just remaining gravel. Some roads should be updated to surface treatment. And maybe there's some other options. Maybe we could use a mixture. A lot of municipalities use a mixture of asphalt millings and a gravel mixture, like a 50-50 blend, so that it provides a fairly decent riding surface and there's less maintenance costs, so there's a good balance. And there's other options. Some, you know, you could use a cold recycle mix, so there's some other avenues that you could investigate. But I think it's very important to go through a decision-making tree to determine what roads, you know, and how the road should be improved. So basically, we need to come up with current objective information to make sound decisions. You know, we got to verify our road inventory and the attributes associated with it. Our roadway condition survey should be updated, traffic estimates. We have to review our construction history. This is all kind of the screening criteria, screening guidelines. We have to do some, you know, load deflection testing with that falling weight deflectometer. That's some of our preliminary engineering that I talked about. And then 6, 7, and 8, pavement performance modeling, prioritization analysis, and program funding level needs. That's all part of our pavement management system, asset management plan, all that stuff. So that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
So, thank you for your presentation. Mr. Director, I guess there's going to be a lot of questions, so I will start. How about I start to the right? Anybody want to start on the right side first? Or so? Okay, then I'll go to the left. Who wants to start on the left side? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mike, Director of Public Works, for your presentation. Again, so we understand it's complex. We're very few of us here understand all the details. I understand maybe just a little bit more because of an engineering background, but still there's a lot of information, and I still don't understand all of it. Just kind of transported me back 25 years to really boring classes in McMaster. But anyways, would it be safe to say, though, so you provide a lot of information which gives you kind of a background of a particular road, but would it not be fair to say that first and foremost, higher trafficked roads would form a greater priority, regardless of the condition of the road? But generally speaking, your first starting point is to say, you know, do some traffic counts and say, you know, this road's getting busy, and then you would do a follow-up preliminary investigation to say, this road's in poor condition or it's in better condition, so these are the costs associated with bringing it up to a certain standard. So first and foremost, you know, just doing a traffic count will give you an idea of where to ballpark, you know, spitball in here. Will give you kind of a high level of what roads would be more of a priority, just because a road is good in a remote part of the municipality, and it wouldn't necessarily cost a lot to pave it or put some tar and chip down. At the same time, if there's less people on it, it wouldn't make sense to do it. But if there's another road that's been beaten for 40 years and it's in kind of poor condition, but a lot of people drive on it, that would be a better candidate, even though it's more expensive. So first and foremost, traffic counts are probably your first stab.
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Balsma, that's true. Traffic count is probably your first decision.
Yeah.
And part of your decision-making tree. But again, you know, if you have a high-volume road and it's only 4 meters wide,
Yeah.
I don't know what's more important. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, it really involves a workshop to see what makes sense. And, you know, and maybe it's a road that has poor horizontal and vertical curves. I don't think we have that scenario here in West Lincoln, but if we did, you know, hard topping a road that has high traffic assumes a lot of risk, so maybe you have to add some warning signs and there's another cost to it. But yeah, definitely traffic is probably your, and that was one of my first slides, right? First, you know, gravel roads under 500 should be gravel.
Yeah.
But there's other layers to it. It's like peeling back an onion, right? There's always, so you have to somehow come up with a decision-making tree. And
Would so just to kind of my next question, we were beneficiaries of a large sum of money which was turned into road repairs. You know, the wind turbine road repair fund, names, specific names, but I think it was in the order of 5.5 million was spent. Well, that's another thing. But anyways, long story short, some roads, and I know in my area, 4th Concession, Vaughan Road, they received quite a substantial amount of gravel, 6, 8, 10 inches. Huge amounts of gravel went down to repair the roads. Many of the problems that you had mentioned were there. There was like the double ditch happening, you know, the bulge of dirt at the side of the road. So they were brought up. And they've become better gravel roads. Would it be prudent at this time maybe to take advantage of the fact that some of that structure was provided for us from another source, and you know, take advantage of that by throwing down some tar and chip, because you know, according to some of your analysis, in 5 or 10 years, most of that gravel is going to end up deteriorated in the ditch in the form of dust clouds, this, that, and the other thing. But right now, they're kind of been primed to receive, you know, maybe just a quick grading, some tar and chip can go down, and it will actually reap that benefit of a long life because the sub work was done by that fund. Is that through
the chair to Mayor Balsma? Everything you're saying makes sense. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's hard to.
Yeah, right. I just want to say that there's some realities in our municipality that allow us to maybe take advantage of.
It's hard to say. Again, you know, trying to paint a picture that you need to look at the whole network, right? So maybe, you know, the 100,000 to tar and chip a road that is ready to receive it, but maybe that 100,000, you know, could save 4 or 5 other road and extend their service life. Unfortunately, we can't answer that question because, you know, all we really have is a roads need study, which is good.
Yeah.
But we don't have a pavement management system that, you know, it's very powerful pavement management systems, and it tells you everything. Like you need the staff to run it, and you know, or consultants can run it for you. You know, you could throw in a whole bunch of what if scenarios and make sound decisions.
I guess the reason I'm mentioning is that while it's not an emergency type issue, if we decide to go down this road, you know, at some point in the course of the next little while, or if we put it off 10 years, I think we won't be able to take advantage of something that we just were able to recently. So time is somewhat of an essence in a you know, yearly fashion. The third question I wanted to ask, in your opinion, would you say that you showed kind of a maintenance schedule for a typical gravel road according to transportation, you know, stats or standard transportation specs? Would you say that West Lincoln is doing a good, great, or satisfactory or poor job of maintaining it to the standards in terms of grading, dust control, keep maintaining the crown, the ditching? Like in general, are we meeting that? I think it was something like 13,000. There was a sum and per kilometer. Are we spending that on the 134 kilometers of road?
Again, through the chair to Mayor Ballsma. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to look
Okay.
into that, but it's definitely something that I'd like to review with our, Public Works Manager and with our accounting system, see what we're spending, and comparing it to other municipalities, benchmarking. So it's hard for me to say right now.
Yeah. I think it's important to kind of have that piece of information, because the report that we get from citizens, and in my inbox, it got another one today, somebody asking for, of course, it's muddy season, so the roads are starting to break up. They're spectacular what they do to your car this time of year. There's kind of a sense that gravel gets put down on a complaint basis, grading gets done by a complaint basis, dust collection gets done once a year. Sometimes it works, sometimes just the weather conditions, it's a bit of a miss. I, for one, have been trying to float an idea of maybe building up a little bit more of a flexible fund, that if there's a particular year that misses, a second application on some roads might be necessary for an application of dust control. Some of those things, at the very least, we should be examining whether we're doing a sufficient job on the gravel roads, maintaining their appearance, shape, and base. So just maybe a note that if we go down this road over the course of the next while, that we get some of that information, just to assure the council that we're maintaining the roads at least to certain standards. I think that'd be important. That's all my questions for now.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anybody else with some questions? Councilor Rayner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. This is a very hot topic out in the country. We had a very aggressive surface treatment program when Councillor Trembetta's mother was mayor. We put a lot of money out there, got a lot of the roads done, and they've still held up. And I do believe a lot of them were done without a lot of scientific engineering. It was kind of pick the roads that really need to be done. Gravel was free because it came from Hydro One. Build the roads up, replace the culverts, use our guys to level it out. And within a couple of days of having the roads prepared, they were tarred and chipped. And today they're still holding. I know that that's not the proper procedure to do it, but in the past we've got a lot of roads done, and nobody that's on those roads have regretted the fact that we may have skipped normal procedures, but we certainly got them done. In this particular case, you mentioned crowns in the roads. I walk a dirt road. We call it a mud road. We don't call it a gravel road out there. You have to be on them to live on them to realize that the terminology gravel is really not correct. They're terrible, and no matter how well you do them, within a couple of weeks they turn terrible again. It only takes a couple heavy rains and you're back where you started from. The road that I walk on, Concession 2, when I walk my dog every morning, there's no crowns on it. There is like a double ditch. It's got to go through a lot of grass before it gets to the actual ditch. So there is a lot of, and those roads were redone last fall, and already the gravel's gone. Will you be going down these roads personally, or will you be getting in touch with the councillors of the area to say, let's do a drive and see? There has been some discussion through our new mayor that's made it a mandate that these mud roads will be addressed in some way, shape, or form to so many kilometers a year. In order to try to appease the people who in the country who have suffered for a tremendous amount of time and get some of this done. Will you be out there? Will there be opportunities to go out and look at these situations and maybe come back with a plan to say, yeah, this road looks like it's worth, and therefore then do an engineering study like you want to make sure that it's covered, and we proceed in some kind of direction, much the same as we did tonight with Bridge 34. This was a phenomenal meeting tonight, and we progressed a lot. This was a Ward 1 issue for a long time, and thank you for that. But now this is the second most important thing out in Ward 1 is the roads.
Okay, well, through Chair Trombetta to Councillor Rayner, you made a lot of good points. My only comment to that is, unlike Bridge 34, I think this is going to take a lot of time because you have to look at the whole network. Okay, you have to look at a holistic approach. Bridge 34, I was dealing with the bridge. There was clear facts and there was a solution. But if you want me to go out and visit a few roads with you or any other councillors, I'm more than happy to do that. But you need to look at this is not an easy decision. It's going to take time. I think it's something we should be looking at if that's how council wants to proceed. But be mindful that this needs time. I'm not going to be able to report back in April or June and say this is the game plan that we should go with. That'd be my comment. I'm not sure if it's what you want to hear, but
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director, no, that's kind of not what I wanted to hear because we wanted to get some roads started in 2019, but I'm getting the feeling that 2019 is a theoretical, get all the information together before you actually do anything year. Am I reading this right?
through the chair, that would be my suggestion, yes. And, there's a lot, the decision is council's. We had a discussion at a previous committee meeting about amalgamation, like what is our municipality going to look like next year? I think it's important. If it was me, my recommendation would be, I think we've got a lot of work, good work that the township has done with the roads needs study. I think it just makes sense to collect current information and position us so that we can make sound decisions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, but in order to do that, you're not going to check every gravel road to determine their condition, are you? Or we must be picking certain roads that we feel an opportunity that they could be done?
Through the chair to Councillor Rayner, I presented a table of the condition of the gravel roads in 2014. I think we could start with that and just rule out like maybe 60 or 70% of those roads and take it from there.
Sorry to interject, but the CAO wants to make a comment.
Sure.
I was just going to add that, so staff right now are giving council their best advice in terms of the best way to proceed. And it is council's decision, but what staff are saying is that you need to do appropriate investments in your assets. And that's where the asset management plan talks to those processes for the actual construction and maintenance and life cycle. So I think that our director has given a really good overview of the things that the council needs to think about, and to try to give the best bang for the buck, and to use a loosely used term. But I think this is a factual presentation for council's consideration.
Still got the floor, Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. It's just that, as I said, in the past, we have not followed all this theoretical information and proceeded, and maybe we got lucky, I don't know, but the roads are holding, the people are happy, and they've waited a long time to go up to the constituents now and say, well, we've got another year because we've got to put all the information together. I'm hoping that selectively, I'm sure councillors realize in their areas the priorities of what roads they would like to see, and that could be addressed through the director, and maybe some head start can be done on some of those roads with regards to getting the technical information you need to support the construction of those roads, that we can at least try to do some things this year, because as the mayor had said he was hoping to get a certain amount of kilometer roads done every year in the fourth year. Now, I know with this amalgamation, you could say, that could sewer the whole thing because we don't know where that's going, but we can't stop because of the threat of the fact that we may cease to exist in a year, is a reason not to proceed and get as much as we can in case the amalgamation does cease and desist any further road work done. So maybe we do have a time clock here that's saying we better get what we need to get done soon, because if this changes, we may not get nothing done with this new change. So I don't know, but you can always assume the worst case scenario, because that way it's always going to come out better. But if you hope and dream that the amalgamation's got to make every road a beautiful road, and we're not even going to surface treat it, we're going to pave it, that's just not going to happen. So I don't want to hold this up because of that cloud over our head. And I'd also like to see something proceeding, because there's certain roads that I'm sure every councillor in each ward could say, you know, these couple roads, indeed, I've received the most complaints about. People have waited the longest. There's a reasonable period of traffic. Let's get some work done on it, and let's get some calculations, and let's determine what we can do this year. I don't want to lose the year.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor.
Chair.
I got some other people that like to speak to this issue, so I'll start to Councillor Riley, and then I got Councillor Jonker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll try to make this brief. I think, how do I put it? Not to get into a debate or anything, but I do think that for the 2019 year, I don't think this is something if we're going to go forward with building roads and whatever our goal ends up being, I don't think we should be just trying to rush into it because we're running the clock. And that being the case, I trust that our town staff is going to do things in the manner that they feel is best suitable, that's going to serve the greater good of our community. And we're not going to just try to, again, to use the same phrase there, run the clock because we're afraid of the amalgamation or whatever. At the same time, I think, again, I don't want to turn this into a debate, but I think we have to have some patience. We have a lot going on, and it feels like there's constant pressure. And, we have somebody who's just taken a new position, who's already done a wonderful thing and getting, like I said, Bridge 34, I think for what we end up getting it for is a miracle. And then they continue to pressure him about roads and wanting like stuff done while we're still trying to figure out budget and everything else, and we haven't even agreed on that. And and then we have the idea of what how many kilometers of road we want a year after you guys just finished approving last term a $30 million building that we still have to pay for and figure that out. And we're trying to make operational on its own, and we're trying to spend more. I think it's very irresponsible, and I think we need to smarten up.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Jonker?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Mike for the presentation. And I think what we need to realize is we live and use those roads daily, getting home from work. So I think what we need to do is, I think we need our township to get caught up a little bit on our gravel roads. So what I would like to see first happen is we have these gravel roads, we're getting complaints on them. I think what we need to figure out is, are they crowned proper? Is the water flow proper? Do we have second ditches on these roads? And I think if we can address the water issue on a lot of these roads, that's going to make a huge difference already. So I think what we need to let our staff do is go out there, take a look at what we have out in the gravel, on gravel roads, and get them caught up a little bit. And I think once you have proper crowning, you can keep the water off of it. Potholes don't form as quick, and you don't have a mud road because the water is actually getting off the road. So I think that's what we really first need to do is assess what these gravel roads need for 2019 and get them up to snuff. And then in a year or so, or in next year or 2 years from now, go, okay, these gravel roads have been up to snuff for a year. Which ones should be hard topped or chip and, there we go, tar and chipped? Because I really think the biggest issue we're facing in the gravel roads is are they being kept up? And once they're kept up, they're not going to be necessarily a mud road. They're going to be a gravel road. So, Director, I think just keep with the plan there. Let's see what we have for assessment, on our gravel roads, and we do need to do something out there, but we need to do it smartly. So I think the presentation today shows that we have a director that's going to look at things and come back to us with recommendations that make sense, so. But yeah, the gravel roads do need to be addressed, but I don't think we can look at doing any tar chip this year.
Thank you, Councillor Jonker. Councillor Cody?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this report. It was very enlightening. I think this is exactly the route we need to go. I certainly would not be a proponent of councillors choosing roads in any of the wards. I think we need to do the studies and compile the data and choose roads wisely. That's the best use of taxpayer dollars. I haven't been a councillor very long, but I've already come to realize that the term rural infrastructure is code for pave my road, the one that I live on. And I think we need to get away from that. We need to make sensible decisions that are best serve the entire municipality rather than the select few screaming to have the road that they currently live on paved.
Thank you, Councillor Cody. Councillor Gannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also appreciate the report that you presented tonight, Director. I think that that we have been told through all of our orientation sessions over and over again that we as council need to respect the experience and the expertise of the people that we've hired to do the job. And I think that the plan you've laid out is a good one. I think that we have to be very, very careful. I would concur with Councillor Jonker. As I listened to what you were presenting and watched your description of what a gravel road should look like, it brought to mind that many of ours, I don't think, although I'm not a road expert, look like that. And I think that they probably should. Before we start looking to pave some, we should be certainly looking at having good gravel roads. And so I would think that in the course of looking at what you're doing over this gathering information session, if you are working with your staff to take a look at whether our gravel roads are actually up to good gravel road standards, I think that would be a good first step for 2019. The budget allocation for roads could be spent that way very easily. That work would be being done anyway, but maybe looking at it through different lens is a good idea. I think that was a very good suggestion from Councillor Jonker, and I certainly think that we as a council need to be looking at putting those major decisions as to be, what should be done and when it should be done in the hands of the experts, and that would be our staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gannon. I got a few things to say. As much as I'd like to see these roads get pumped out right away, I still think this council needs to undertake a study first. I think we need to hire, and I'm not a big fan of this, but I think it's needed, but I think we need to hire a consultant to go do boreholes on certain roads. Vaughan Road might be ready to go now. Concession 3 might be ready to go now, or might be needing a full reconstruction. But without a study from a third-party agency, we're not going to get anything done. So I think as council, we should put some money in the budget. I don't know, Mr. Director, how much would be a study to do some boreholes, like on a road, let's say, to say this road's ready to be tarred and chipped tomorrow, this road needs a foot of gravel. How much would a study cost?
To you,
For a
Chair.
third party,
Yeah.
because I know we don't have the staff to go out and do that, so.
Okay. Well, if you're, again.
Just an average, like,
Yeah.
just
I
you don't
think
have to, that's not a hard number,
No,
I'm just.
I know, but just looking at one road would be different than the whole network. So I would suggest the whole network. And,
Correct.
There's consultants out there that do this for many municipalities. I believe, City of Niagara Falls has done something similar with a consultant. It could be in the order of, we can make
That's
it
fine.
however we want. It could be anywhere from 30 to 50,000 and kind of do a network analysis. And, I would suggest, instead of boreholes, which are costly, I would suggest the falling weight deflameter
So-
to do some engineering. So, $50,000, $30,000 to $50,000 would give you some really good information.
So that's, I think, first before we can ever roll out any roads.
I agree.
A study to be done on, obviously, a borehole study to say, hey, listen, we got so much gravel, this can take one of Councillor Yonker's trucks, no problem, or yeah, we need another foot of gravel on it. Like, we need that done first as council before we start picking roads or doing what we want. I don't think that where you can just pick a road and say, hey, that's the road we got to tar and chip because of certain certain things. You know, I've suggested roads, and then the reason why I've suggested a road is because there's a hamlet there and there's an outlet for that hamlet. I have me personally, there's nobody that I live on that road. Actually, there's nothing that road does, but maybe that road is not in good sustainability and it needs so much work that maybe that I have to switch and switch and think of another road. So I think the study is important. I think something like that is much needed to be done before we can actually roll out anything. The other thing, you did say to this council that there's a 50-50 blend. I think that is a great idea because that's going to solve a lot of problems. If there's a 50-50 blend that sustains and it holds potholes and it holds a lot of mud away and dust, I think that's an actual cost savings route that maybe that can do. But I don't know too much about that, so maybe need some more information on a 50-50 blend, or maybe if you can, Mr. Director, show me a road that has a 50-50 blend that I can kind of take a drive down. I know we don't have one here, but or maybe Google a picture I can look at of a 50-50 blend for myself.
Leave that with me, and I'll see what I can find.
You know, because I think that would solve a lot of problems, and it'd be actually a cost-efficient thing to get some of these roads done. Maybe instead of tarring and chipping a certain section, we do a 50-50 blend, and that helps out a lot of the issues that we're probably going to get in about a month and a half from now, which, you know, the April showers bring, right? So I'd like more information on that. I think that brought forward to council at your convenience, Mr. Director. That would be great. But I do think that council should undertake an analysis that's done so we can figure out what's the sustainability on some of these roads, because I think the information that we have at this moment is no good. So anyways, Mr. Mayor, I know I triggered something you want to talk about, so.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify something. First of all, if I ever gave the impression that I don't care about data and facts, that's completely wrong. I never have spoken disparagingly about the road needs study. It's a source of data and it's a source of information, and in your presentation I concurred. I understand those aspects, although I find it a little bit more interesting today sitting in this chair than I did in a lecture studio 25 years ago. I think I fell asleep that class, but I don't think that we necessarily need to do a study. I just want to pull back just a little bit on the study, and that is this. I don't think it's necessary to do a holistic study. Again, to that one point that that I raised earlier, and I'd like to raise it again. I think it would be appropriate in the short term, as we go, to get data that we might actually use. If we do, for example, engineering studies of all the roads, knowing that conceivably we may be able to do at some point 3 or 5 kilometers in a year. In this term, we're looking at tops 10 to 15, maybe at best case scenario up to 20 kilometers of road. So knowing that data deteriorates, or at least the roads deteriorate and the data becomes a little bit skewed over time, I don't think it's necessary to do 134 kilometers of bore road testing. But given the information that we already have currently in the road needs study, although it's old, traffic patterns don't change too much. It might give us an opportunity to address, say, the top 20 or 25 kilometers that are most likely to have the most traffic, and then study those roads and come up with a plan that, while it's dealing with roads in a holistic manner, it's spending good money on information that may be used, rather than to spend a whole lot of money on data that may not ever be utilized. In other words, if 5 years from now the next term of council decides to go down this road and continue, they can do that study again for the next 15 or 20 or 25 years. Or if they decide to go another route and say, spend money elsewhere and roads aren't important, of course, we answer to the public every 4 years, and they decide then we didn't spend money collecting data on roads that will never see tar and chip, and it's someone else's problem. So we may be able to do this quite cost effectively by just kind of going to that road needs study that already exists, gathering some data, and hit the low hanging fruit, the ones that have the most traffic, and it would just allow us to save some money and get data on roads that are conceivably possible to be paid this term.
But the
if that's the
roads
road we're
need
going.
study is based on traffic counts,
Correct. That's why I'm saying
but it's not sustainability of the road.
I'm saying that the roads that give us the biggest bang for our buck in terms of like the roads that are the most traveled generally have the most houses on them. They're also the ones that we're generating the most complaints because of that.
Sorry to object, Mr. But my whole thing with the roads need study was I wasn't a fan of the roads need study because the majority of the traffic alleviates from those certain roads that are potholed or cratered fold mud roads. So the traffic counts are really low on those roads, which triggers the roads need study to say we don't need to tar and chip it.
Correct. I agree with that. But still, it's the only source of information that we have.
If I'm wrong, please correct me, Mr. Director.
Okay, well, through the chair to the committee, the road need study is a big document. I haven't gone through it all. Perhaps maybe a call with the consultant so I could understand what was in it and what their rationale was and what their objectives were. But I do think traffic was one aspect, but they did do condition assessments. So I kind of presented the pavement deterioration curves. So I think they created a decision matrix that included the condition of the road, traffic, and kind of spit out a priority ranking. Where do you get the best bang for your buck? So I think that information is there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it is because I went over it with Brent 3 years ago. So.
It's there. Maybe it's like it's in my opinion, it needs to be updated.
Sure.
Just like any study needs to be updated every few years. So as I said,
that condition.
I did I gave you some information. I could collect more information, talk to a consultant, report back. I guess the decision's yours. I don't really know.
Thank you, Mr. Director. But that condition study states that, let's say, a road that's got a 75%, I guess, capability. Does that mean that it's ready to be tarred and chipped right away? Because the study's so far back.
Well, okay, so if you're saying that if they
75.
found a road that was a PCI 75,
Yes.
what I think the road needs study did was, on that curve, it was able to predict if it's a 75 today, in 5 years' time, it would be a 60, and that's when you want to resurface it. So I think that's what the road needs study. So a road that would have said 75 for pavement condition, it probably would have put the priority in year 5, year 10 in the capital forecast and do some improvements. I think that was basically how the road needs study was done,
Okay.
which is pretty standard with these types of studies.
I'm sure we're going to have some more dialogue on this topic as well.
I believe we still have that floor though, Mr. Chair.
Well, you can have it back.
Okay. Well, thank
I
you.
had it first, and then we were talking back
Well,
and
you're the
forth.
chair,
Yeah,
so you always kind of have it.
Exactly. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
All I wanted to do was to see if we could just, again, I don't want to throw good money after bad. When it comes to, maintaining rural infrastructure, getting the most distance out of our money is really the key. And I didn't want to get caught up paying for data that we probably won't be getting to. We won't be paving the 134th kilometer of gravel road, tar and chip, in this term. And so I'm trying to kind of high level, if we want to go to 30 or 40, I mean, I use the discretion of the director, but I don't think we need to collect all the data over again and pay for data that we're not going to use. I know these things they're quite efficient, and so I just want to be efficient. If we, at some point, these guys are on retainer all the time. If we want to get them back in here in 3 years and do some more data collection, we can get them back in here to do that data collection. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not spending good money to go after data that we may never conceivably use, and just be efficient with that data collection so that we can make a wise decision with the top 5, 10, 15, 20 kilometers that we may be looking at in this term. That's all.
The only reason why I suggested doing a study was if it's going to expedite the process to roll out roads faster. That's what was the idea. It wasn't to, trust me, I'm not a fan, and you've known me on council before, I'm not a fan of going back for more studies, Mr. Mayor. I was never a fan before. I'd like to, because I find that kind of delays things. But if the study's going to expedite, that's what I'd like to see we can roll this out. So just for a point of clarification for you. Councillor Rayner, and then I got Councillor Cody.
Thank you. That was my point initially when I said pick the roads. I was basically meaning the same, except I didn't say it the way the mayor did. But there's no sense doing 133 kilometers of testing when you know darn well 80% of them aren't even going to be eligible. Let's not waste the money. But we also have a pretty good idea what roads may be high on the list, and maybe the roads needs study would do it. But if the road needs study does it by count, there also could be a falsification in that number. Because I know where I live, for example, I will go out of my way not to go to beat my car up on a mud road. So if I have to, for example, I go to the post office, instead of taking concession 2 right through from Westbrook all the way to Caister Center and have the living daylights beat out of my car and can't tell what color it is by the time I get home, I will go around and find a surface-treated road. So the numbers you may get for surface-treated roads aren't necessarily the numbers that would be had the shorter route for people who live in the country have those roads available. So there could be a false number there where you're getting a high count on a surface-treated road, but had a mud road been done properly, that count may have been reduced because people are purposely going out of the way and not going on those roads. So I don't know if they really want necessarily the individual road count based on the houses there, or what the actual traffic would be if the road was of decent condition that people would want to use it. And that may be another factor that needs to be considered.
Thank you. Councillor Cody?
Yeah, maybe through you, Mr. Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong. The roads need study didn't actually speak to resurfacing any roads with a different surface than they were currently surfaced.
That's correct.
So we don't have any study at all that talks to when our gravel roads should be repaved. So to not do a study of all of our gravel roads and compile a priority list is asinine to just randomly pick a few.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cody. I just, one more further comment. I still like that 50-50 blend. I do. If that's going to save a lot of these issues that we're going to deal with, as many councillors do in the next month, I'm hoping to see that at a cost-effective way. I don't know what the makeup of the road is to do a 50-50 blend, if we can still use our roads need study and roll them out with that 50-50 blend. That I don't know.
Well,
But
Chair,
that,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Mr. Director.
Chair Trombetta, there's other options out there. There's even the question, when do you upgrade a surface treated road to asphalt? Maybe there's cost savings to do that, right? There's my advice would be you got to somehow develop some kind of rationale and come up with a priority listing, because maybe
Correct.
maybe we get better bang for our buck and updating some surface treated roads to asphalt instead of gravel to surface treatment. I can't answer that right now, but you got to look at the whole
Well,
network.
I can see that, especially myself, but I don't know whether to speak for other ones, the passion that's trying to roll out some roads that haven't been done in so long. I know we're going to deliberate and discuss this further. I know we can kind of call this to an end right now, because or else we'll keep going until, way past time. So I can see the passion that everybody has. Obviously, they're wanting to get some stuff done, but I'd like to thank you for your presentation, Mr. DePaula. And it was well received, and I know we're going to have a lot more deliberation in the future. So I'd just want to say thank you for that presentation, and I'm quite sure members from the gallery would like to discuss something if there is, so I'll move on to that. So anybody here request, saw you there, Mr. Bell. So I wasn't going to let the gallery speak. I didn't skip anything, so.
My name's Terry Bell. We're at 7 Manorwood Drive, Smithville, Ontario.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Mike. There were 2 great presentations on the gravel roads. Well done showing the construction of the road, the ditches, the crown, everything. I'll talk about the gravel roads first. There was obviously a lot of discussion about it, and there has been for years and years. The road needs study talks about whether you got 500 cars, 1,000 cars a day, et cetera. And it's been proven it's a great study. Mike's talked about it quite a few times. 2014 was the last time. Yeah, it needs updating. He also talked about the gravel roads that are in there. Why can't you start with those ones to have a look at? See if there's still candidates. Start with those ones. All the other ones that are being spoken about, go to them, look at them, as I said earlier, get them on the list. So they're there so they can start moving through the process. You know, we're going back to the Wild West. I want this one done, I want mine done, this one done. Some of the councilors touched on that. And the road needs study has to be done. Nobody wants to spend tons and tons of money doing every gravel road in this community, and I agree 100%. But we know which ones have good use on them. Which ones are the roads that are taking us from point A to point B out to asphalt. We know that. So those are the ones in my mind that you want to be looking at to start getting them onto that study on that route. Probably the biggest decision you got to make is you got to give your public works director the okay to start that process and get it going. Because you can debate this till the cows come home, and next thing you know, you got a new council up here, and damn it all, nothing was done again. So he needs some direction and some help. And, you know, I'm sure you'll make the right decision, and most of you really looked at what was going on, and you had a lot of good questions. You've seen the roads. And, you know, I live in the urban, okay, but I drive the back roads lots. You talk about crowns and drainage and ditches. There's so many flat roads out there, it's scary. You know, you got to share them with the geese sometimes. Like, there's just so much out there. And I think if they're allowed to go out and look at these and start putting some crowns in the road, start putting some ditches in. Some of these roads you want to tar and chip, you know what, they're going to go away because you're going to have decent gravel roads out there. But we're not doing that. Like I say, they need direction. He needs to be told, go ahead, do what you got to do. Let's get the show on the road. So anyway, that's addressing that. Thank you for that. I want to talk about Bridge 34. I'm happy that you found a solution. I know when I spoke the first time about it, and I was happy that I was able to light some fires into some people and get them going, and it actually did. And here you had a solution tonight. The downside to this solution, okay, it's really concerning that here we have, and I'm just going to round the number out, we've got a $500,000 project. It never went out to tender. It was handed to a contractor. There, you can do this one. Looks good, price is great. That's not the way we do business. You want to buy 50 chairs, you got to put it out to tender. Library wants to buy books. Everything goes to tender. Now we're handing out a $500,000 contract. That's a pretty dangerous precedence. And this thing got pushed through to get done. It's been down, that bridge has been down since November. You know, is another 4 or 6 weeks going to hurt while it gets done in the proper process? It leaves a lot of questions. Why did it go to this contractor? Who picked this contractor? What was the big rush to push it through? There's going to be a lot of questions being asked. And I just think it was totally wrong pushing that through that quick without going up to tender with it. Why wasn't it done? Why wasn't it sent to tender? I don't know. But I just wanted to get that out there. I think it's fair that people know what's going on, and it should have went to tender. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any comments or questions for Mr. Bell? Councilors? Is that no? I'm assuming no? Nobody else? All right. Let's move on. Consent agenda items. Item PW 1919, West Lincoln Public Library Board minutes, January. Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
I thought you were going to ask for other people from the gallery.
Sorry, Mr. Crosby. Sorry. Any more people from the gallery would like to speak? I apologize. It wasn't personal. I didn't see any hands up with my face there. Sorry about that.
Rob Cosby, 5969 Concession 7 Road in West Lincoln. First of all, I actually thought that this part of the meeting was going to come up at the start because there was a comment or question I wanted to ask about the Bridge 34 that nobody has touched on. And the first, the one thing was the new bridge that is now been looked at to go in. Is it come with no load restrictions? And number two, is it the same width as the bridge that's already there? And those reasons are basically for an agricultural standpoint, because the farmers that are out in that area, if they're used to moving equipment a certain size, they want to make sure that now they're not going to have a bridge that they can't get across.
Probably can get the director to answer those questions for Mr. Crosby if you want.
Okay. All right. Through the chair, yeah, the bridge will be is designed to Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code, so there will be no load restriction on it, and it'll be the same width that's out there today. Okay.
So, so that's good to hear, because that's been a concern across the ag region and across the province for moving farm machinery on roads and across bridges and stuff, that and roundabouts and that kind of thing, is that it restricts the movement of farm machinery. The other thing is, I guess I'll throw my 2 cents worth in about the local roads. I totally agree with the presentation that the Public Works Director presented. I think we'd be hard pressed to find any road, gravel road in this township, that even remotely looks like his ideal picture that showed up there. I think most of them look like those ones that are flat and double ditch, two sets of ditches on the side of the road and sloppy and everything else. And I firmly believe that that is a result of a lack of funding, whether it was that the Public Works Directors of the past never asked for it, or whether the council just turned a blind eye. It seems that all the gravel road operations come into the operating budget. There's never capital works for a gravel road. It's always operating. And we never seem to see a substantial amount of money put into the gravel roads. And I really think that a good place to start in this township, whatever roads are tarred and chipped or not, they all need some kind of a base. And 90% of them out there now, I don't think have it. So I think, 4 to 6 inches of gravel on all of our roads would be a heck of an improvement over what we've put up with for probably decades. I had a discussion with the Public Works Director last week, and 2 weeks ago. His viewpoint on how to maintain, how gravel roads should be maintained, is along the lines of what I think there should be. We should not be putting up with 6-inch potholes. We should have drivable, good roads, with proper drainage. I think that would go a long ways. And I really think that consideration has to be looked at when you're looking at the budget this year. Because if we don't start moving forward, we're just going to slip further and further behind. The road needs study was cited different times. Remember, the price tag on that road needs study was $25 million to get our roads up to standard. That was 5 years ago. We haven't spent anywhere near that. So we're still way, way behind here. And somewhere, somehow, we've got to make an attempt to get back up to speed. And I haven't seen it in years and years and years. So that's where I stand on it. And I hope you think about that, too, when you're thinking about budget next week.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Anybody else from the gallery that's any comments? Okay. Oh, come on down. Just your name and address for the record, sir, if you
Norm
can.
Giddings, 24 Jane Street. The problem with a gravel road is clay gets to a certain saturation point and it becomes a sponge. And you have to address the base before you can fix the top. And if it doesn't drain, it'll just keep doing the same thing. Swallow, swallow, swallow. So an engineer needs to study this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Anybody else? Seeing nobody else, I'll move on. Thank you. West Lincoln Public, this consent agenda items, West Lincoln Public Library Board minutes, January 10th, 2019 and February 22nd, 2019. Public Works Recreation Committee hereby approve the following consent agenda items. Item 1B, and hereby receive for information. I need a mover. Councillor Riley, Mayor Bosma. All those in favor? And that's carried. We figured item number 7, there's no communications. Item number 8, that was already dealt with. We have item number 9. I don't know if you have any other options, Mr. Riley, at this point, or?
I guess at this point, we would just remove it. I'm
Yeah,
not too
we
sure
just
how we do
remove it.
that, because, you know, I'm not,
Unless you're covering the.
yeah, the building went
Unless you're
over.
covering.
See other decision.
Thank you. So I'll move on to PW 22-19. Members of council, any other business of an informative nature? There's no new business. Oh, sorry. Councilor Cody, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm obviously still new, so I didn't know when to do this, but it was brought to my attention from members of the public that we've chosen to call the mirrors now the West Lincoln Community Center, which would, in our world of social media and text messaging, be called the WLCC probably most often. However, we have West Lincoln Community Cares, which already goes by WLCC, and there were concerns that they would just cause some confusion. So I just wanted to maybe present to council out of good nature. Maybe I know we haven't spent any money on marketing material or anything as of yet. So if we could call it the West Lincoln Recreation Center, and then at least wouldn't share its initials with West Lincoln Community Cares. How do I?
It's a good question. I think that we're going to have to get the CAO maybe to look into that a little further. I don't know if you want to roll out, or if you can roll out a new, what's it called? A little, what's the actual term? An acronym. That's the word I was looking for. An acronym for it to kind of.
My immediate thought was, is there another group out there called WWRC that I don't know about? So this is going to be, I think, a council decision. There's lots of acronyms that are used by more than one organization. So if you'd like me to research it, I'm happy to do that. But you know, quite often I hear community care called community care, not the WLCC? WWLCC, yeah. So I don't have an opinion, really, but just sometimes when you open that door, you might walk into another block, so you might want to think about that.
Okay. Councillor Riley?
Yeah. No, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Cody, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I share Madam CAO's opinion in the terms of opening that door. They're more or less I don't think, it's really iconic enough. I don't think they trademark that acronym by any means, or they would have the ability to trademark that acronym. And I don't think you're going to go to one confused thinking you're going to the other. I think they're both very clear what they are. If you were to, I guess, throw other ideas, as you can maybe add an A to the end of it for the arena. But again, I don't really think that's going to be too confusing for the general public, but I do think that it's worth chatting about, to say the least. So,
good conversation piece. Yeah. Well, hopefully a sponsor comes through to get the naming rights to the building, and we can change it all together. Yeah. You want to come forward and name it the Rayner Center?
Well, no, I'm sure the CAO can follow what I'm dealing with, because she's a U of G grad too. We have the Ontario Agricultural College, which is OAC, and now Leon calls it unapproved credit. So it's the same thing. I mean, we've got acronyms that are
not a laugh from the crowd.
So, I mean,
anyways,
Mine
crickets.
went to the Ontario Art College, so
Crickets. Anyways, there's no confidential matters at this moment, and I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:27. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.